Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland, attorney blogger on Bowtie Law and the Legal Geeks. Today, we're going to talk about The Truth is Out There, celebrate the 20th anniversary of the X-Files. And there's only one person alive that I know who is an attorney who can handle this as a PMK on the X-Files, and that's Caitlin Murphy at Access Data. Caitlin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. I'm happy to be here talking with you about one of my favorite subjects.
It is. It's a great subject, and as the world probably knows, we both watched this frequently at UC Davis.
We did. Go Aggies.
So back in the day, I fondly remember in 1996 to 1997 watching the X-Files on Sunday nights in the dorm. What were your memories during that time?
Very similar. As our watchers should know, Josh and I were both in the same dorm at UC Davis, and it was a real ritual every Sunday night at 9 p.m. back in the days before on-demand or DVRs or Netflix streaming. You would have to actually wait for a actual place and time when you could go and watch your favorite show. And people, there weren't a lot of people out in the hallways at 9 p.m. on a Sunday because everybody was watching the X-Files. And I don't think I ever had more pleasure in watching the show than that season where we were all in the dorms at Davis, because I felt like, there was such a camaraderie around the show.
I agree. My roommates and I would watch it together, or, in the student lounge, a bunch of people would gather there and watch it. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't talking. Everyone was quiet, glued to the TV set, because they wanted to know what was happening, and they were absorbing it. And I don't know if there's any other programs that college students are doing that with right now. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think the X-Files came around at such a special point in time, kind of the birth of the internet right around the show, and people were kind of like the first listservs and discussion groups online kind of grew up around the X-Files. I freely admit that I was part of those. Fan fiction, people writing stories using the characters. I know a lot of that started with Star Trek, but the X-Files is really what took it online and created a worldwide community around a show where you really felt that, like we said, every Sunday at 9, whatever time zone you're in, you were part of a huge community watching the same show together and, living the ups and downs of Mulder and Scully as they went through the mythology and the standalone episodes, Monster of the Week episodes.
Agreed. And, for me, it continued throughout Davis and law school.
Yes. That
people would get together and watch, and people knew not to call during that time.
That's right. Everybody knew not to call me at that time. I would hang up on people.
Things came to a grinding halt because Sunday nights, that's what we were doing. And maybe, I've seen some of the previews for shows coming out this fall. I'm cautiously optimistic about things like Sleepy Hollow and Almost Human. Mm-hmm. Fox did a good run with Fringe, which again, it was, kind of goes back to it as an homage to the X-Files.
Right.
And I hope they kind of stay towards their sci-fi roots in being able to have good sci-fi programming that we can all, rally around.
Yeah, seriously. I remember watching the X-Files in law school, but, as you know, we both graduated from law school in 2002. And 9/11 happened right in the kind of middle of that. And I really think, when we're watching this show for the broadcast today on 9/11 yesterday, and I do think that was partially the death knell for the X-Files. So I do remember watching it the first part of law school, but then the second part, I didn't watch it as much. And I just think that people had less of a taste for government conspiracies and the darkness and, all the things that made the show great. It was just after that event, it kind of, that kind of dissipated a little bit, that want for that a bit.
Well, it had been on for, 9 years?
And it had been on for 9 years, and David Duchovny left the show, and Gillian Anderson largely left the show. But maybe we shouldn't relive sad things. We should relive good things.
Let's talk about the 90s, when we all knew that deep down we all got along. Sure, we fought over things, and there was that 96 election and that impeachment. And we all loved each other.
We did. It was a much better time. And really the reason we decided to do this podcast is it's been 20 years since the show came on the air, which I really can't believe. Ages me quite a bit.
I remember,
me, I should say.
I remember when it came on when I was in high school.
Oh, yeah.
I would watch it after work. I worked at a movie theater and wore a bow tie. So for my first job, I actually...
So did I. No wonder we're so simpatico.
And for those who haven't seen us together before, back in the day, we cut our teeth as, at CT summation in the early days of the federal rules of civil procedures being amended. And we traveled across the country, and so we had road shows and everything. So we presented together many times.
There were definitely references to Mulder and Scully with in regard to you and me, Josh. We were the team.
It was fun, and
summation team.
it was fun, and it was nice to actually get to do an homage to those days and the show simultaneously.
Yeah, and in fact, I started watching the show in high school because so many people kept coming up to me and saying, "Oh, there's this new show on TV, and the lead character really looks like you. You got to see this woman; she really looks like you." And at the time, I was wearing my hair like Scully. I had like a little kind of bob. And, I got enough times, had somebody say that to me, that I thought, okay, I'm going to turn this show on. It's probably, halfway into the first season. And from then on, I was hooked.
Just so the record's clear, in high school, I was never compared to Gillian Anderson. No, nor David Duchovny.
Well, I was Scully talking about my geek cred when it comes to this show. I was Scully for Halloween twice. Dyed my hair redder than it is now for that occasion. I also went to an X-Files convention on Mare Island in Vallejo. Yes, I did. I actually conventioneered. What else? I was a frequent contributor to listservs and fanfic sites in the 90s, and have pretty much a reputation amongst most people who know me as the biggest X-Files fans they know, and I can rattle off the plots to most episodes by name if you quiz me.
You know X-Files like I know Star Trek and Doctor Who. So
exactly.
This is why I come to you. I love the show. I do have a couple seasons on DVD, and I have been watching them on Netflix. But you do have a command of the subject matter unmatched with anyone I've met before.
We all have our little areas of expertise.
It's a beautiful thing. So with that, let's do the merging of our expertise, because we're both attorneys. You were Hastings, I was McGeorge, I was 01, you were 02, we were both
Oh, you were 01, that's right.
Yeah, which did, graduating at the end of 2001, there was optimism, there was a lot of stress, but September 11th did derail a lot of things, and I've been thinking heavily about that. So... but with that, let's focus on the positive, and let's talk about Humbug.
Humbug. So this episode of The X-Files, which came to us in season 2 of the show, I believe, is a classic, one of my favorites. And it's a standalone or a Monster of the Week episode. So that's kind of a distinguishing characteristic for those who don't know the show as well as Josh and I do. There's the conspiracy theory shows that kind of run an arc through the entire series, and there are standalone episodes that can be watched, as if they are not part of a larger series. And this is one of those. Mulder and Scully travel to a village or a town in South Florida that's populated entirely by circus freaks. And they go to investigate a series of strange murders that have occurred there of the freaks themselves, and meet various interesting and colorful characters along the way, and encounter some legal issues as well.
So let's talk about the legal issues Caitlin and I identified. And it's always fun watching two lawyers issue spot. And so,
reminds me of law school exams.
This could make exams a lot more fun.
More fun.
And we should probably say, let's do something like this at a Legal Tech or an ILTA, because I think we would pack the room.
That would be really fun. Good idea. Write that down.
I'll tweet it later.
Okay.
And so we have Lenny, who had a conjoined twin. So he has this big lump on the side of him, and he has this like cloth over it. Well, as we deal with this issue of what's going around and taking a big bite out of people, we learn it's the conjoined twin actually can disengage and like has a big suction mouth thing on it.
A true X-Files growth out moment.
You know, how can we make a scary baby puppet freak people out? And they succeeded. Because, I mean,
they did.
You only see it very quickly. It's covered in goo and blood, and it moves very quickly. But they follow the Steven Spielberg Jaws formula, and that you only see quick glimpses of it and moves quickly. Can be Akira speed lines as it comes at somebody, which was very effective in making it super creepy. And it's taken bites out of people and then goes back and re-engages. So first thing I start thinking about is, are you your brother's keeper?
Right.
And what are your thoughts on the legal issues with this conjoined twin disengaging and then taking a bite out of people?
Well, there are a few issues. Number one being that, in my mind, is can you consider these two people to be separate individuals? Okay, you know, they're twins. Generally, twins aren't considered one individual, but one needs the other to survive. The conjoined, the small twin, Leonard, lives in Lanny's abdominal cavity. Lanny has a special kind of carved out area in his abdominal cavity that Leonard, as Josh described, kind of suckers into. And he can't really live, Leonard, without, you know, having some sort of like resource like that to cling on to, kind of like a mistletoe in a tree or something. And so you kind of get into this issue of, do they really have separate, and are they really separate entities? Do they have separate intents? Are they separate bioentities? And if they're not, can Lanny be held responsible for Leonard's crimes? And Josh, you look like you have something to say in this area. I'll pass it back over to you.
It's fascinating to think about because Lenny is a cognitive human being.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, Leonard is human, should be considered human just because he was born attached to a twin. And so just from our like view of what is human under the 14th Amendment, you think he would qualify as a U.S. citizen. But on the other level, he seems feral in nature and doesn't behave like a human being. And he behaves very animalistic because he disconnects and he goes out looking for another person to connect to. And it's not like he has communication skills or any of the qualities that we would think would make somebody human. So it's just on that issue alone and being able to go, could you try Leonard for murder or homicide? It's kind of confusing from a legal.
Yeah, it'd almost be like trying a baby. And we talked a little bit about diminished capacity or inability to have mens rea because he's basically a humanoid creature. He's not a fully formed person. He can't survive on his own. You kind of get into, like you said, some interesting 14th Amendment issues there. The other one, the other issue I kind of came up with is if Leonard is just looking for a home, which is what you realize throughout the episode is Lanny is actually dying. He's got cirrhosis of the liver, and Leonard can sense this because he's kind of attached into him like a bio, mass, and he's looking for a new home to go to. So he's actually not trying to kill these people who are killed by having a large gaping wound to their abdomen, where Leonard is actually trying to attach to them like they're a new brother. So there's another issue in that he's really not trying to kill anybody. And we're not even sure if he has the mental capacity to realize that he did kill somebody the first time he did it. So in that case, could he be tried for murder? What degree?
Yeah, it'd almost be like just a homicide. a negligent homicide is what you'd be going after on Leonard. But if Lenny knows that Leonard's going out and killing people and is not doing anything to stop it, Lenny's responsibility is different because he knows his brother's dangerous and out killing people and doing nothing to stop it. And if there's any part of the country that would understand a medical condition like this, it'd be one where a bunch of circus performers and carnival acts reside, because you have the sheriff who used to be, the dog boy.
The dog boy, that's right.
And so you couple that and it's like, okay, there would be an understanding medical professional to go see because of this very unique condition taking place. But that knowledge, I think, would actually create criminal and civil liability for Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, civilly, how are you going to go after a guy who, carries luggage for a living?
Right.
You're going to go after him criminally because of his inaction, people are dying.
Yeah, and we talked about, maybe he's even aiding or abetting or aiding after the fact. He's not, he's obvious. It becomes obvious throughout the episode that he knows that Leonard has been the one committing these crimes. He's been aware of it for quite a while. So I think there's, 3 or 4 murders that occur before Leonard is stopped in quite a spectacular way at the end of the episode. But yeah, Lanny's got this knowledge, and he's basically like harboring Leonard after he's committed these crimes. So yeah, we've definitely got some causes of action against Lanny, the kind of regular twin as well. And with Leonard, the idea that he's attacking people with not the intent to kill them, but the intent to just find a new home, still doesn't relieve him of all responsibility because somebody's dead. But then, you do have this defense of diminished capacity of some sort. I guess they'd have to put Leonard in some sort of psychological profile evaluation while he's hooked up to a incubator or something. I don't know.
But a psychologist,
the logistics baffle the mind.
Yeah, but a psychologist would go, this is a feral creature.
A feral baby.
It doesn't act like a human. And so it's very messy from a legal perspective.
Yeah, very messy. Oh, and the final thing that I thought of with this episode is in the end, the Conundrum, who is one of the circus freaks in the show, a very famous one from the Jim Rose Circus, it's implied that he eats Leonard at the end of the episode, because you see the Conundrum getting attacked in the way that the other victims were, and then you see him kind of laying on the ground and kind of rubbing his stomach as if his stomach hurts, and then he says, Scully asks him what's wrong, and he says, must have been something I ate. And that's the only line he says all episode. So then I was thinking, is eating somebody self-defense for them trying to gnaw into your stomach?
Probably.
Is it a sufficient self-defense?
Was there a less hostile means to take care of this lethal threat? Because he knew it was lethal.
Well, it was definitely trying to kill him. He knew exactly what was happening. He ate him first.
Wow. That is and the other one that's actually a clean constitutional issue is after arresting somebody, the right to counsel.
Right.
Other nice things about this episode is Gillian Anderson comes across as very strong.
Mm-hmm.
When one character asks her if she knows anyone who can get out of the straitjacket in under 3 minutes, her reply is, fortunately, no. And she has these wonderful zingers.
It's the great Scully episode. One of my very favorite scenes in the entire series of The X-Files is where one of the circus freaks offers her a bag of crickets to eat, and as a snack, just to kind of test her, because she and Mulder are so obviously this, squares in this community, and they're kind of testing her, and she just, unflappably just reaches in there, takes one, and eats it. Appears to eat it. Later she shows Mulder that it was actually sleight of hand. She actually hides the cricket away. But in the moment, she's just so cool and calm and collected, and she just meets that challenge. And that's the Scully I love. That's the the reason the character is just so awesome.
Gillian Anderson played a brilliantly strong female lead, and there were others at that time as well, but she's probably one of the more classic ones. And when you think early 90s, you also think James Cameron's Aliens, Sigourney Weaver. So, they do exist.
Really?
It totally cuts down the argument that they can't write a Wonder Woman script because we have a long legacy of very strong female leads.
Yeah, and Gillian really, with Scully, I think she's still to be matched on the small screen as far as a strong, intelligent, logical female lead.
Well, playing Ahab's wife in the Moby Dick remake, she did a brilliant job at that. And, definitely not. She's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
She's also got a new show that came out a couple months ago on the BBC. Actually, it's a British show called The Fall. I highly recommend people check that out. She plays a detective in charge of a serial killer investigation in Belfast, and talk about a strong female character. Boy, she'll blow your socks off. And she is in her late 40s now, and boy, does she look great too.
Rock on. I'll have to check that out. So let's talk about one of the other episodes that we identified that has great legal issues, and that is Small Potatoes.
Small Potatoes, written by Vince Gilligan of Breaking Bad fame. He was actually one of the regular writers on the X-Files and wrote some of its funniest and kind of softest episodes, which I know is funny to fans of Breaking Bad because not known as a soft, or I guess it's a pretty funny show, but not known as a soft show. And he wrote this episode, which is one of the great ones. Other interesting thing about this episode is one of the other X-Files writers, Darren Morgan, plays the starring role of Eddie Van Blunt in this episode. So he's also a lot of good writer talent on this one. This is another one of my favorites, absolute favorites. Although I had to kind of examine why it was my favorite in watching it for this purpose. And this is an episode where we have Eddie Van Blunt, who is a kind of no-count janitor who works at a hospital, has kind of not done much with his life. But Eddie has one incredible talent, which is that he is able to transform his face and his body into that of anybody he sees. And so instead of using this, for good in the world, to stop crime or to promote peace or something like that, he uses it to, frankly, rape a bunch of women and impregnate them with his seed so that they all have his children. And the way he gets to them is that he works for a hospital that has a fertility clinic in it. And so these women all come because their husbands can't get them pregnant. So he turns into their husbands and does the job for them. And the reason that Mulder and Scully get involved is because Eddie, along with the amazing ability to transform into anybody else, also has a vestigial tail, which means he has a tail, and he passes that feature on to all of his offspring. So they see a pattern of babies being born in a small town, 5 or 6 of them all with pretty significant tails. So they come down to check that out, despite Scully being a little bit skeptical, as always, of why they should do that. And I'll hand it over to Josh to tell you about the hilarious Geeks moment that this episode starts out with.
So 4 of the 5 women who get raped are married. The 5th is a single mom, and turns out dated Eddie in high school and thought he was a loser and regretted it. But she was also a Star Wars fan and claims that she got knocked up by Luke Skywalker because Mark Hamill came over. And it was Eddie impersonating Mark Hamill. Now, unfortunately, they did not get Mark Hamill to do the episode, which would have been entertaining.
Would have been awesome, yeah.
I don't know if they even bothered asking or
who knows.
That would have been entertaining. So out of the gate, you think she's, this is a nut job and her kid has a tail, so maybe there's something in the water or something going on. But they identify with DNA that all the 5 kids have the same father, as if the tail wasn't a dead giveaway.
Right. And that definitely leads to some very strong legal issues. As Josh and I have both said, these women were raped by Eddie, despite the fact that, 4 of them thought they were having relations with their husbands, and one of them thought she was sleeping with Luke Skywalker, which made her pretty happy, as she mentions during that pivotal scene that she divorced 368 times and is hoping to break 400 by Memorial Day. little hilarity there in the episode. But it really does lead to discussion of the legal issues surrounding consent. So these women, both Scully and Mulder both characterize it as rape within the episode. But there is an interesting wrinkle to it that these women really did think they were sleeping with somebody that they were, happy to do that with. And for all intents and purposes, he was the person that they thought he was physically. He had become the other person. So there's no real precedent for this. It's not like he was impersonating somebody by, putting on a costume or using, lights and mirrors. He actually was that other person. But I think that, other than the fact that, he wasn't actually the other person, the important issue is that mentally, inside, he wasn't that person, and he intended to do them harm. And had they known that, they wouldn't have consented, or they were unable to give consent because of that.
It is one of the strangest identity theft issues, because the identity theft statutes don't quite get into literally becoming the other person.
Right.
But you would still make the college try in charging the guy over with that. At least I would if I were a DA or a U.S. attorney and this was a federal crime. So you have that wrinkle as well, which is very bizarre. You then get into paternity issues. What are his legal obligations as a father? And when you look at the obligations of a rapist who knocked up a victim, I didn't research that just because it's strange and horrible and I know there's case law on this sort of thing. But that's pretty dark.
I think all obligations is attached, yeah. Although not rights, I don't think.
I would agree with that. I don't think no court on God's green earth would give a rapist rights for child visitation or anything like that, but they would be happy to take income away.
Exactly. And yeah, the thing that I said, this is one of my favorite episodes, and I really had to re-examine that because I kind of felt that in this episode and a couple other episodes of the X-Files as well, for those who are well-versed, Postmodern Prometheus comes to mind. The X-Files kind of plays that consent issue for laughs a bit, and it's a little uncomfortable. They kind of try to skate over it by saying, in fact, the character of Eddie says it. He says, "I don't understand, why, what's wrong here? Everybody's happy. These women couldn't have children. I made it so that they could have children. They thought they were sleeping with their husband. Everybody gets what they want. So where's the crime?" He says to Mulder and Scully. And, the lawyers in the room go, the crime's right in front of your face. It's a crime of rape. But you kind of get the feeling that the show's writers and creators are maybe kind of advancing that idea a little bit because it is played for laughs and it is played lightheartedly. Of course, we wouldn't have an amazing episode if it weren't for that.
Yeah, and in it, at least everyone from the FBI agrees that this is rape. But when you look at this one in Postmodern Prometheus, that one is utterly horrible.
Yeah.
I remember, that was on while I was in law school. And the next day, a bunch of us talking are like, this leaves the message that rape was okay.
Yeah.
Consent after the fact. And it's this is really misogynistic and...
Right. Disturbing.
Yeah. It's never okay.
No. And the fact that it's played lightheartedly and played for laughs is a little bit uncomfortable, despite the fact that the episode is a classic and I still do love it. Definitely watching it this time made me really aware of that fact. But, there are other legal issues in the episode as well that maybe we should talk about.
Yeah, let's move away from the uncomfortable subject of rape so we can bring the children back into the podcast now. Now it's a safe place. But that is, we have a shapeshifter.
Yep.
He impersonates the police officer, and Agent Mulder. So now you have issues, and Caitlin gets credit for both of these, of impersonating a police officer and impersonating a federal agent. Caitlin, what else would attach to that impersonation issue?
Oh, geez, now you're pop quizzing me. Well, filing a false report as a federal agent. There's a scene where he plays with Mulder's gun in his apartment. If the gun goes off, discharging of a federal agent's firearm. Breaking and entering into Mulder's apartment. He goes into the apartment. He has the key, but he's not supposed to be there. The booking officer, I think he cold talks him after he turns into him. So you've got that issue as well. Driving, if he drives away in the patrol car, that's another charge. I just think there's so many issues. I don't know, have I missed any?
Those are all that I saw.
Okay.
There might be a couple others with entering the FBI building, but
Right. Yeah, he might have probably like talking with Skinner about a classified report. There would be some impropriety around that.
There's got to be. And so, this heavily reminds me of going back to Davis and Professor Peterman's political theory class, the Ring of Gyges. That you take a good man who's then given a ring that can turn him invisible, he'll kill the king and sleep with his wife.
Right.
And the shapeshifter does that.
Yeah, he pretty much does.
He doesn't kill anyone, but he does obviously show zero moral compass.
Mm-hmm. And then, go ahead.
No, you first.
Well, you said he doesn't kill anyone, but somebody does die on his watch. That's another source of legal issues in this. The agents go to investigate Eddie at his house, and his father answers the door. And they end up talking to his father, but through a little verbal slip, it's revealed that it's actually Eddie impersonating his father. He actually uses Mulder's name. He says, Agent Mulder, something, 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 and Mulder says, wait, I didn't tell you my name. And he says, oh, well, she told me to Scully. Good actor, by the way. Yeah, I guess he has to be with his particular skill. And Scully says, no, I didn't. And then, he takes off running, and it's basically Eddie impersonating his father. And that leads them to find Eddie's real father sealed up with quicklime in the walls of the attic of the house. So he's definitely got some legal issues around that. The one that I thought of was improper disposal of a body. Josh, I know you had another one around the corpse itself.
I went around desecration of a corpse.
Right.
And both probably would apply. And again, this is where the DA would probably make the judgment call or just hit them with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that would really depend on the DA in West Virginia on what he's or she is up for.
Mm-hmm.
But with impersonating Dad, the reason he was impersonating his dead father was to collect Social Security checks.
That's right.
Which would be a federal crime. So this issue is, this episode is riddled with legal issues.
So many issues.
Plus kind of just a creepy feeling just because the rape aspect.
Mm-hmm. Definitely creepy. And I think one of the best parts of the episode, one of the most kind of subtle points that they make with the script is that Eddie Van Blunt, he's really a loser. He's a janitor. He can't, when you see him in his regular incarnation, he's nothing to look at. He's not very smart. He's just kind of a schlub. And he gets to go impersonate Agent Mulder and be Agent Mulder. And you can tell that he's just like, he keeps talking about, you're a good-looking man. You David Duchovny, boy, you're a good-looking guy. I can't wait to go have your life. And he actually goes, and breaks into Mulder's apartment and listens to his answering machine. And you know what he finds out? He finds out that Mulder's a loser. And he doesn't have any friends, and he doesn't have a girlfriend. He doesn't have women calling him every day. Well, not real women. And he's just, and he says to him, he's like, I'm a loser by birth, but you're a loser by choice. How can you live this way with your face? And boy, is that a great point in the X-Files. It's such a subtle and interesting commentary on David Duchovny's character of Mulder. And you had a great observation about the acting in the episode that went with that.
David Duchovny does a caricature of himself, and he really shows his acting chops of play you being somebody else who's a dweeb. And he does it well, reciting lines from Taxi Driver and, and just like rolling with it. And like he had fun with that. Now, something that did bother me, I don't know if this is guys just like not being able to write a female character, because God knows I couldn't write a script with a woman and not have her sound like a robot. But you have Scully, who has the impersonated Mulder show up at her doorstep at 2:00 in the morning and to have a glass of wine. And, it's Brunt trying to seduce her. And you think she would have noticed that this is completely out of Mulder's character. Fox would never do these things. He's married to his job. This is a boring guy who hangs out with some conspiracy theory guys who's into UFOs. And now I'm going to, basically get seduced. And like that just seemed very out of character for a very strong character.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was probably the point where I was kind of most, I don't know if I would use the word like disgusted, maybe disappointed with the creators of the show, that they would include Scully in that group of women that were duped by Van Blunt, because like you said, it was so out of character, and she knew what Mulder's suspicions were around, that case, that he thought Eddie could turn into other people. She knew that Mulder wasn't acting like Mulder, and I agree that letting Scully be the dupe, the X-Files is guilty of that on several occasions, but in this episode, it sat particularly sourly with me too. Even though when I watched this as a 19-year-old, like that was my favorite part of the episode, because I was a relationshiper and they almost kissed, even though it wasn't really Mulder. Looking at it, watching it again, I was like, oh, this is really kind of disturbing in a lot of ways, and embarrassing for Scully when Mulder breaks in on them in the middle. Van Blunt's about to kiss her. Right before it happens, the real Mulder bursts into the room and breaks up, anything that's happening. Poor Scully must have been so embarrassed.
Well, that, and again, it shows he's the good wingman, the good partner, that his first instinct was he's going to go and try to seduce my partner, so I'm going to go stop him.
Mm-hmm.
So, good character play with him.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm watching this, last night thinking, like, she's smarter than this.
Yeah, definitely.
Brunt misspelled Federal Bureau of Investigation twice in a report. It's like, those should be like big warning signs of like, something's wrong here.
Yeah, right? And then you kind of wonder, well, was she suspending disbelief because she really wanted that to happen? Did she have a crush on Mulder? I don't know. We're only in season 4 here with Small Potatoes, so maybe. I don't know. It's hard to get inside a character like Scully's head, especially when the writers played kind of fast and loose with their intentions toward each other for episode to episode. But, yeah.
Agreed. So let's talk about one that aired while we were at Davis.
Yes.
And this aired right after Thanksgiving. So I remember watching it in the student lounge with a couple other students right after Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Because, like Mulder, I was the loser that immediately came back to school so I could study, because that was the fun college student that I was. Always studying. But it's the Tunguska, and God, my Russian's horrible. So
Tunguska, I think Tunguska, something like that. It's a conspiracy arc episode.
Mm-hmm. And why don't you talk about, it's a complex story with.
It is. It's a larger part of what they call the mythology of the X-Files. That's the name that fans give to the series of episodes that run throughout the entire 10 years of the series, that are about the alien conspiracy to take over the Earth and, turn the humans into drones and then basically destroy us. And our government's, what's the word I'm looking for? Our government's, help with that plot. So this is one of those. And the kind of, I guess the overarching plot points of the episode are that Mulder comes into contact with Alex Krycek, who is a longtime villain in the show, somebody who was originally an FBI agent assigned to work with Mulder, but went over to the other side and is a thoroughly bad guy. And at the same time that Mulder comes into contact with Krycek, somebody tries to enter the U.S. with a diplomatic pouch carrying some very dangerous material. And that material, through a series of, we'll talk about in a minute with the legal issues, through a series of bunglings by some customs officers, gets released and infects some of the characters with the black oil, which is the alien virus that, boy, I could get into a long explanation of the mythology as well. But anyway, Krycek offers to take Mulder to the pouch and find it for him. And various things occur as a result of that journey, including Krycek and Mulder ending up in Russia, in Tunguska, Russia, near where the Tunguska incident happened, which is supposedly a extraterrestrial and or asteroid that landed on Earth and flattened hundreds of acres of trees in the 30s, I believe it was, maybe. I didn't look it up. And there are just, and the other part of it is that Congress calls Scully in to testify about Mulder's whereabouts. So you can just imagine this was a treasure trove of legal issues. And Josh and I managed to spot a few of them. I'll let you start, Josh.
Well, thank you. So there are all kinds of issues with this. And so let's start with the basics from the beginning of going through customs with a biohazard in a diplomatic bag. And before we start immediately thinking of the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 2 with diplomatic immunity, you did a little research on diplomatic bags. So
I did. I went down a Wikipedia black hole that started with contempt of Congress and led to diplomatic pouches. But I'll talk about diplomatic pouches. I was interested because they detain this guy at a checkpoint, or just a general customs checkpoint in an airport at DC at Dulles, and he keeps claiming that what he's carrying is a diplomatic pouch and that he has diplomatic papers, and yet the customs agents still detain him. They still open the pouch. They still take out the contents, and which leads to very bad demise on both the part of both the agent and the courier. So I looked it up and actually found out that if you carry something across the border in a diplomatic pouch, federal agents are not allowed to question you about it. They are not allowed to detain you, and they are not allowed to tamper with the pouch in any way. However, there are some things that you need to do, which is number one, the pouch needs to be marked diplomatic pouch. So I did not actually go back last night and look, but I don't think the bag was marked. And I think that might have been, I don't know if the customs agent, knew about that, but that was kind of a weaseling out of that situation. But had the pouch been marked, that everything that the customs agents did would have been against diplomatic law. And I read some fascinating stories about what's been carried in diplomatic pouches, including hostages, people, because the pouch doesn't have to actually be a pouch. It can be a box or a crate or a cargo vehicle, freight shipping container. So there have been some fascinating items, and if you go to the Wikipedia entry, carried in diplomatic pouches across borders during extremely tense times in world history. And so reading about this, I thought, there could be legal issues for those customs agents around opening that pouch, depending on how it was marked. Aside from the death issues that resulted from when they opened it.
Well, the second one with the asteroid bit was marked.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the first one was plain, so I think that's how they got
what with the canister, yeah. I think it was plain. I think you're right.
I think it was. So that would be my read on that. So that is fascinating. Because I look at this, it's like, wow, biohazard. They're not labeled.
Yeah. But if it's in a diplomatic pouch, it's okay.
Yeah, diplomatic papers, but the metal suitcase was not labeled, and he purposely did not have the combination for it, so he couldn't open it. And so this was the customs agent who ended up ruining his life by doing this.
Yes, having little black slugs crawl up under his skin and squish out into his eyes, which seems like not a very nice fate.
I'm not cool with that, and I remember every time I watch that, I'm always going like, ew, ew, ew. I can't put in a contact lens, so the idea of black ooze taking over really doesn't.
Oh yeah, awful.
So one of the other things, because this is 1996 when this airs, Airport security was extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you watch the original Airport movie where the theory was you could just walk onto the airplane with a bomb, you could see the change over 40 years. But this was, there wasn't the motion sensor, so when the guy turned around to run back through security, no alarms were going off.
Right.
Easy access to the flight line. You can't be impossible today for that to happen without people tackling you from the TSA like nobody's business.
And just general other people in the airport too, probably.
It's because of 9/11. You're not going to see passengers go down without a fight.
Nope.
You will. They will. It's like, well, if I'm going to die, I might as well fight and not.
Right.
Which is what happened with the shoe bomber. People tackled him. It's like we're not taking this. So. But this is 1996. It's still a very different United States.
Totally different world, yeah.
And we hadn't gone through that yet. So this is also the era of right-wing militias. Oklahoma.
That's right.
Oklahoma City was 1995, and they're out chasing bad guys who are from a right-wing militia and with a large explosive device. And so So they're pulling from the current times. So that is important to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But this leads to the arrest of Krychek. And, Caitlin, do you want to get into some of the issues that you see right away with arresting someone?
Well, actually, I think I'll pass that one back over to you because I did not write that one down. And I totally missed that one. And I thought, there's some issues around that, but I'll let Josh do that one. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, he's arrested, and, there wasn't really Miranda rights being given. And that was, at least I didn't notice it. And
I didn't hear any, now that you mentioned that.
And part of it is Krychek is a known bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps killed Mulder's father. And, and so they kind of skip over basic constitutional norms. And part of the issue is Krychek claims to have more information about where more explosives are.
That's right.
And so they end up with this weird situation of that they've detained him and that they've arrested him, but they didn't Mirandaize him.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're trying to use him as a cooperating
witness. Yeah, something.
Informant. It's a little weird with how they do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Scully goes off in one direction to chase an issue, and Mulder needs a place to put Krychek. So he takes him to Skinner's office, and Skinner had issues with Krychek.
Yes.
And, knocks on his door at, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And, we do have Skinner, who people love seeing without a shirt, because he might be a bald
Mr. Beefcake.
powerful, handsome man. So they enjoyed working that in for people who enjoy that. And, I feel like I should hit the gym now. But
I know. So strong looking.
When asked, well, what should we do here? He's like, bring him inside. And he immediately decks him.
Yeah, it's a pretty hilarious scene. He's like, Mulder's like, I guess I need a safe house for a witness. And Skinner's like, sure. Then they got Krychek's handcuffed, and Skinner just socks him in the gut.
As a lawyer, I should not be okay with this.
He deserved it, though. You gotta admit it.
yeah. I'd be like, oh, he slipped. Oops, my fist broke my fall. He handcuffs Krychek to the balcony, which Krychek says, I will freeze out here. And Skinner replies, think your own thoughts. And so I'm like, you're dealing with, we're not following the law at all at this point.
Yeah, we're outside. We're renegades at this point, yeah.
Way outside any law. We're now bordering on kidnapping and torture at this.
False imprisonment, for sure.
With the associate director for the FBI, who's like, oh, I'll hit him again. And
right.
So it's like, that's just, none of that's okay. Absolutely.
None of it. Everything to do with Krychek in this episode is breaking several laws. But you know what? The takeaway is that it's Krychek, so you don't really care.
I say hit him again.
Maybe if I were a criminal defense attorney, I'd feel differently. I don't know.
You just like look at how bad he is.
I know.
But what they were doing is just like so against the law, it's not funny.
I know.
And Krychek ends up defending himself on the balcony and pulls a guy off and falls off the balcony to his death. And so you now have Skinner's home as a crime scene with Mulder taking Krychek out. So you get, I mean, there are just tons of issues with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely Krychek murdered the guy, but was it in self-defense? I don't know if, I mean, I don't know if there was actually a self-defense argument at that point, because this agent comes out onto the deck looking for the diplomatic pouch. Krychek's out there handcuffed to the deck. He conceals himself by jumping over the other side and hanging by his handcuff on the other side of the deck. The guy finds him. There's a struggle, but it's not clear that the guy is trying to kill Krychek, but Krychek just pulls him over off the deck and tosses him to his death. So I don't know if, aside from all his other crimes, if Krychek would have a very good self-defense argument for that murder.
No, and we get into issues with the FBI. Are we now like aiding and abetting after the fact?
Right.
Which is,
and you can tell some wheels got greased because, the detective on the case, the local detective, the DC detective that finds the body, splattered on the ground, as soon as he realizes that, or Skinner tells him that he's an assistant director at the FBI, the investigation all of a sudden kind of shifts back over to the FBI and the U.S. Senate, actually. So it's no longer a local,
issue. It's
jurisdiction, of the local cops.
Then we get into a weird issue we visit a UN employee who was able to help get forged documents for Mulder and Krychek to go to the former Soviet Union. And you get into, I'm like, right out of the gate, I think of, so we have forged travel documents to enter another country. We have a federal agent who looks like he's gone rogue in order to uphold the law, which is a funky place to be. It's now starting to smack of having your own personal foreign policy.
Right.
We do not allow. So, weird issues there. And the other one, while the Senate does have oversight of the executive branch, as both houses of Congress do, the X-Files plays fairly heavily with that, where it almost seems like the Senate has executive pool over the FBI, which, not a senator, I haven't worked in D.C. I don't know if they do that sort of thing, but that seems to raise a weird separation of powers issue. Yeah,
definitely.
Because the Senate can't give FBI agents, direction.
Right. Yeah, and there's an interesting scene where, once Mulder's harried off to Russia, to Tunguska with Krychek, the Senate certain senators are still looking for this diplomatic pouch with the rock or the cancer that has the alien virus. So they pull Skinner and Scully into a senator's office, and they're asking them questions about, why did you try to get this pouch? Why did you arrest this man at the airport? Why, where's Mulder, and, Scully's being reticent about, answering these questions. And the senator says to her, perjury is a very serious offense, especially for federal agents. My question to figure it out is whether making a false statement to a U.S. senator is just automatically perjury, or was he alluding to the fact that he was going to holler in front of a committee and make her swear an oath, and then if she said that in front of the committee, then it would then be perjury? It was a very interesting statement to me from a legal point of view. If it were a threat, okay, then I get that, but it kind of seemed to me like he was talking about the situation in the here and now, so maybe something in need of some more research.
Yeah, she wasn't under oath.
Yeah, not under oath. I mean, is there an implied oath if you're talking to the senator as part of an investigation? I don't know. It's very strange.
It's not like, with an attorney having a duty of candor to the court that we always have. So it's a little weird.
Maybe it was just Hollywood, not getting it quite right.
And we know that's happened a few times. So. We know that's happened a few times.
Yeah, maybe just a couple times. But then that does, the episode is kind of out of order, out of sequence time-wise. So we see Scully in the office with the senator, but there's also a scene at the beginning where she actually is testifying in front of a committee. And they're asking her, where is Mulder? And they're asking her about the pouch and the contents. And she won't answer as to Mulder's whereabouts. She won't answer the question. And as she states, on the grounds that she's afraid, she fears for Mulder's life should she reveal his whereabouts. At which point the senator says, "We're going to hold you in contempt of Congress if you don't respond to this request," which also sent me on a Wikipedia junket reading about contempt of Congress, because I was trying to figure out if there are any defenses to contempt of Congress, or not defenses, but, justifications for not revealing information to Congress. And would those just be like the general justifications for not revealing information if it puts somebody's life in danger? I couldn't find anything special about it. And what I figured is that the weighing of, jailing somebody for, it's not less than 1 day, but not more than, I believe, 90 days. I have to look at the entry again. Is less of a ill than, than having Congress not have its needs, its requests met. So, an interesting issue there.
Yeah, it makes me immediately think of McCarthy hearings.
Mm-hmm.
And are you a member of the Communist Party, and to name names, that sort of ugly line of questioning.
Mm-hmm.
She might have been able to have made a Fifth Amendment, defense at that point, because they were operating so outside of the law because of the situation.
Right.
That might have been a more appropriate one. It might have started instant prosecution of her. With issues, but that would have been a different tact. But she actually makes a comment about lawyers actually in the continuation of it as well, that lawyers ask questions for things off topic when they don't want the answers to the things that are on topic. In which that comes in part two. We'll talk about that another time. But there's tons of issues in every episode of the X-Files, and so it's always a lot of fun to go back and watch these now with our attorney point of view, as opposed to just high school, college, or law student point of view.
Right.
But now this is one of the shows that spanned from college to graduating law school and joining the workforce, which was a very, a couple other ones meet that, come close, but this is the only one that actually went all the way through the entire season. So, for
people our age, this show started, you and I are both in our late 30s, this show started when we were in high school, even if we weren't watching it yet, and it went all the way through to, like you said, graduate school or being in the workforce. It was 9 years, very formative years, and it was arguably, the best show on television at the time, or one of the best. So those of us who like, good entertainment and good things, we were all watching it together at the same time, and it made a big impression.
Yeah, it was, this was a really good point in TV history. You had X-Files, also in 1993, you had Deep Space Nine start, you had Babylon 5 start, Star Trek The Next Generation ended in 1993, and there was a lot of good programming, during that span. You also get Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, there are all these good
so much great stuff.
Yeah, and not that there aren't good things on now. I'm not watching TV as much because I work for food. But I'm optimistic about the future, and a couple new shows coming out, and hoping they're good.
Yep. Although they'll never be as good as the X-Files.
Time and place, and I want to believe there'll be more classic shows out there.
I hope everybody's noticed my faux poster up here in the background. I actually did have the full-sized poster in my college dorm room when Josh and I were in school together.
That's my roommate. I had a Canadian roommate, and he had one as well. So
It was a popular item at that time.
They were very popular. Now, there's talk of them doing another movie. And
I know. I have a mixed reaction about that because I saw the last movie and I was a bit disappointed. And I kind of just feel like that maybe it's time to let it sail away on its graceful progress. But I don't know. I'd definitely go see it.
Yeah, when you have litigation, that follows on like who and what's rights, and that's part of the reason why the one from, 2003 or 2004, whenever the last one came out, was more the Monster of the Week episode. Mm-hmm. And what I read was they might do something that deals with the deadline had passed for the alien invasion.
Oh, interesting. Well, see, I would be interested in that. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I would, again, cautiously optimistic. I want to believe Chris Carter would do the right thing.
That's right.
So, Caitlin, this has been a lot of fun. And
it sure has.
I mean, I'm thinking about doing a couple of the comic conventions in the future, seeing if they'll accept an idea. Or this is the dream. If we do get nominated for the Geeky Awards again, or not, well, we were just an honoree. If we actually get nominated, I would love to have a table of e-discovery people, maybe a couple of judges at the ceremony. I think that would
make sure I get a ticket, man.
Oh, we get awesome if we're able to pull that off. So,
that would be fun.
To dream of nominated, and have a wonderful party with like-minded attorneys.
Like-minded attorney geeks. I love it.
There are a bunch of us. So, well, everyone, thank you, and again, thank you, Caitlin, and we look forward to seeing you in the very near future.
Thank you, Josh, and remember, everybody, trust no one.
The truth is out there.